Ever since the phone was invented, this has crippled salespeople for decades. It's call reluctance. That fear of picking up the phone and having that conversation with the person on the other side of the line. Why is that? And how can you get over call reluctance? There's 4 simple key elements that you can inject into your day, starting today, that can help alleviate that call reluctance. Now, I think it's important to recognize that doesn't necessarily go away. Guys, that anxiety, recognize that as a good thing. When you have that anxiety, that somewhat of a stress response, trigger your brain to think about that as more of a stimulus that your body and your brain are communicating, saying, this is important, it's go time. Because when you have that pit in your stomach, all that does is it creates more blood flow throughout the body. Guess what? Pumping to the brain, pumping to your arms, your hands, your fingers, that creates your ability to execute on the things that are most important to you. Recognizing that stress response is really important whenever it comes to moving forward and executing on things that give you a little bit of fear and anxiety. 4 key tips to working through call reluctance. Service, visualize, plan, and smile. Service. It's focusing on the service that you're able to provide and what you do. And it might sound a little cheesy, but we have this saying that it's hard to be nervous when your heart's on service. I get it, I know it's a little cheesy, but it's also important to recognize that whenever I'm picking up the phone, I'm thinking, how can I help this person? I'm also getting out of my head, I hope they don't say no to me. It's focusing on them compared to you. Number 2, visualize the prospect in a positive light. So whenever I was knocking on doors in college selling books, I would remember driving up to these houses, and I had this weird mentality that if I was working in a subdivision and all the houses were the same, I would get anxious, and for some reason I'm like, oh man, people in subdivisions are not as nice, and what am I gonna do? And it was all building that mentality in my head, and so I did have door knocking reluctance. After recognizing that, I started to shift my mentality, and I actually looked for reasons why I was excited to talk to those people. And I remember driving down the driveway, and I'd had a first year following me, and I'm like, oh man, they have yard gnomes. They're gonna be the coolest people. You see that? They have a roof. People with roofs, they're buyers. People that have basketball hoops are the coolest. And they would look at me and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, do you see that? Do you see those yard gnomes? Do you see that giant globe that they have on the front yard? They're gonna be the coolest. By the way, if they have a globe, it normally means they're in their 80s or their 90s, but I digress. It's visualizing when you are picking up the phone. Visualize if you've had any interaction with those people, or if you know the person that interacted or introduced you to that person, why are they going to be so cool? Man, Bobs are the friendliest people in the world. People with the last name of Johnson are always the coolest. Get yourself to laugh a little bit. You're taking yourself too seriously. The third one is a little bit more focused on the tactical side. The third is planning. And what I mean by planning is planning who you're going to call. I can't tell you how many times I have prospecting in my calendar, and I'm like, cool, time to prospect, let's go. And I sit down, I'm like, who am I gonna call? Okay, let me pull up my list, let me see, okay, who's next? And ooh, I don't know if I'm gonna call that person because I called them a couple days ago and they didn't answer, and I don't know that person. Plan it out and have an intention. If you're gonna make 20 calls, list out the 20 people you're going to call. And don't think, just act. Go down that list because you planned it in advance. Utilize that to your advantage. Number 4 is bring your interested energy. Bring your enthusiasm. And the ability to do that will create your ability to smile. One of my clients, he owns a gym, and every time I walk into that gym, Will, let's go, you ready? It's gonna be a great workout. And it's like 6 a.m., 5:58, and I'm like, what, where, oh, yeah, let's go, Jordan, let's get after it. And he creates that enthusiasm, that energy to be excited, and honestly put him in an excited state if he needs that, and it puts me in an excited state. And so I don't necessarily mean when you pick up the phone, start screaming at the prospect that you're excited to be able to talk to them, but the idea of being interested and excited to be able to get to know the other person and smile. If you smile, even if you're picking up the phone and calling someone, they can hear a smile on the phone. If you're interacting with somebody in person, being able to smile, of course, too. It's hard to say no to a smiling idiot. And so to make sure that you're bringing that energy, that enthusiasm, and excitement every time you're picking up the phone and calling somebody to help alleviate that call reluctance. So to recap, in order to overcome call reluctance, it's service, visualize, plan, and smile. And subscribe down below if you want to learn more information. And go ahead and leave a comment, like what stuck out to you? What'd you enjoy? How would you overcome call reluctance? What is your strategies for being able to do that? This is just a few examples and a few ideas. There's millions. What sticks out to you? So if you're a person looking to increase their intention when it comes to picking up the phone and prospecting, and in turn increase your ROI of your income by 46%, go ahead and give me a call, shoot me a text, hit me up with an email. Let's grow. So the 4 key tips to working through that fear and anxiety. The first one is, I don't remember. Whenever I just heard
that's what he's laughing.
Let's grow.
Let's grow. Yes.
It's way too close to let's ride. Broncos country, let's ride.